We're going to talk a little bit about aperture. Aperture is both a physical thing that happens inside the lens and a mode that your camera you can put it in and shoot in aperture priority. We'll talk about shooting in aperture priority later on in a lesson called Shooting in Aperture Priority. That mode is great, and but I think in order to really fully understand how to do that, you should understand a little bit about what's going on inside the lens and the camera when you adjust the aperture. So the aperture is a hole. I have here a lens adapter that you can actually see the aperture changing on. So it's sort of, think of it as a dissected lens. So you can see the hole in the center of that lens. And as I turn this knob, you can see the hole changing its size from large to small and then back to large again. Let's open it up. Wow, open it up all the way. I see you. It's photography humor. Okay, so there's some blades there. You'll see that the blades actually sort of just close in around the hole to make it smaller and smaller and smaller until it becomes like a pinhole. There we go. And when it's wide open, as you can see, obviously, this hole will let in a lot more light to the sensor of the camera than when it is shut, or what they will call often, they refer to this as stopped down. So this is a stopped down, a higher number aperture, an f-stop of 8 or 12 or 15. And this is much more wide open aperture of 2.8 or 1.8 or 2.0, a lower number. So the lower number refers to a bigger, wider aperture, which lets in more light. Letting in more light will allow you to take pictures at a higher shutter speed, which we'll get to in a minute, so you can freeze the action. But also letting in more light will narrow the depth of focus field. So basically, you can focus on a person's face, and the stuff behind them will get blurred out, almost like a painting, a nice blurred background. So you get a really artistic look where you're focusing on your subject and nothing else can be seen. Everything else is blurred out. You get really sort of a modelly, artsy, artistic look with that. So when you have your aperture wide open, that's when you can get that. When you narrow the aperture to a smaller sort of pinhole, then you have it closed down. Well, now you have a lot in focus. If you want to take a picture of a person and you want to get the background behind them, if they're standing in front of a wonderful building with architecture, you want to get all the depth in the picture and everything should be in focus, well, then you want a closed down aperture. But of course, the only downside to that is, well, look how small that hole is. That's not a lot of light getting to the sensor of the camera, and that camera is going to have to get light somehow. And we'll talk about that when we talk about ISO and shutter speed. So there's your physical demonstration of what's going on when you're adjusting the f-stop or aperture of your camera's lens.